හරිම සුමුදුයි.
Tonight on First at 9 this Thursday, the 14th of December 2023. Funding hopes. State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinga indicates that further funding amounting to $2.8 billion potentially awaits Sri Lanka after the second IMF review. Self-upliftment. Sri Lanka's Ambassador of Science, Technology and Innovation stresses the need for self-reliance as opposed to constantly looking to the government for handouts. Visionary plans. Aviation Minister emphasizes the need for visionary thinking to implement plans that don't result in the issues that have plagued the aviation ministry during the recent crises. Crime load. Minister of Public Security makes a hard-hitting statement that there will be zero tolerance against any forces that interfere with the eradication of crime.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දිනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
නියම මෝල්ට් සාරය සමග මැලිබන් මෝල්ට් දැන් රුපියල් 750ක් පමණයි.
This is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and a warm welcome to AdaDerana's English News. First at 9, this is Jonathan Benedict here on a rainy Thursday evening. Let's take a look at our news stories for the day, starting with our top story right now. State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinga expressed confidence that agreements with private bondholders would be reached before the second review of the International Monetary Fund's Extended Fund Facility Program, expected to be held within the first half of next year. Addressing a media briefing today, he said more funding is expected from global financial institutions, including the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank, following the approval of the second tranche by the IMF. Speaking further, he said that the second tranche of the program will soon be dispersed by the IMF to Sri Lanka. Yesterday, the Executive Board of the International Monetary Fund completed its first review under the 48-month Extended Fund Facility arrangement, thereby approving the second tranche of the program, which releases about $337 million to Sri Lanka. This brings the total IMF financial support dispersed thus far to Sri Lanka to about $670 million.
The Central Bank of Sri Lanka should continue to focus on the multi-pronged disinflation strategy to safeguard the credibility of its inflation targeting regime. Accumulating reserves, supported by exchange rate flexibility, implementing the bank recapitalization plan and strengthening the financial supervision and crisis management frameworks are crucial to safeguarding financial sector stability.
Speaking further, the IMF Senior Mission Chief for Sri Lanka, Peter Brewer, highlighted the need for concluding agreements with commercial creditors prior to the second review of the program, which is expected to take place within the first half of next year.
We would expect that these official sector agreements in principle are turned into agreements by the time of the second review, and also that agreements have been reached with the commercial creditors. We would travel back to Sri Lanka next year and expect the second review could be concluded by the end of the first half of the year. Again, it depends on developments on the ground, but we expect to travel to Sri Lanka sometime in March or April and then conclude the review perhaps 2 months after that.
Meanwhile, this afternoon, State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinga, who addressed the media, intimated the expectation that further funding to Sri Lanka will follow after the approval of the second tranche.
IMF දෙවනි වාරිකයට ලංකාවට අනුමැතිය ලැබුණා. කවදද ලංකාවට දෙවනි වාරිකය ලැබෙන්නේ?
ගංගිය පළවෙනි වාරිකය අනුමත වූ වහාම ලැබුණා. ඒ ආකාරයටම අපිට ලැබේවි. එක්කම අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා විශේෂයෙන්ම මේ වර්ෂයත් ලබන වර්ෂය තුළ ජාත්‍යන්තර මූල්‍ය අරමුදල උන්ගේ අනුමැතිය තුළ අපිට ඩොලර් මිලියන 667ක ප්‍රමාණයකුත් ඒ වගේම ලෝක බැංකුව 2023 සහ 2024 වර්ෂය සඳහා මේ වැඩසටහන සාර්ථකව ක්‍රියාත්මක කිරීම තුළ අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන ඩොලර් මිලියන 1300ක ප්‍රමාණයක්. ඒ වගේම ආසියානු සංගठन බැංකුවෙන් අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන ඩොලර් මිලියන 1553ක ප්‍රමාණයක්. ආසියානු සංගठन බැංකුව විසින් ලබා දෙන මූල්‍ය සහයෝගය මත තමයි අපි විශේෂයෙන්ම අවධානය යොමු කළ යුතු සුළු හා මධ්‍ය පරිමාණ ව්‍යාපාරිකයන් වෙනුවෙන් අවශ්‍ය සහන වැඩපිළිවෙල ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ.
Bondholders have said that they have not gotten any communication from the government
government that they have not been briefed on what was in the agreement with bilateral creditors. Has the government now taken steps to redress this?
Debt restructuring had 3 steps. The first step was domestic debt optimization program. So we concluded the domestic debt optimization program. And the second step from there onwards was the bilateral debt negotiations. But basically we came into the principal agreement was agreed upon on bilateral debt treatment. So first step was concluded. We have concluded the second step. Of course, the MOUs will be signed very soon once the advisors advise us. Now the third step is to engage with the bondholders and come into a very comparable treatment. Likewise, we adopted throughout. So now it has been happening. Our advisors will engage and will come into a positive conclusion on that too.
Is there a timeline for the engagement?
We want it to happen as early as possible.
When the IMF had their press conference yesterday, they particularly mentioned bank recapitalization and how potentially the IMF funds could be utilized for that. Has there been any effort to sort of define how this recapitalization will take place?
Well, the central bank will engage with the IMF and also with the other financial institutions. So bank recapitalization, we have allocated money also from the budget, that is allocation. So this is one of the prime focuses that will ensure that our financial sector will be further strengthened.
When does the government hope to say we are the country, as a country, we are out of bankruptcy?
Well, I think we are almost there now.
You are saying that in the first quarter, foreign projects will start, the money will come. Yes. So one of the conditions they also want is like to say that, we are out of bankruptcy.
Yes.
So do you believe that it will be in the first quarter?
Yeah, we are confident on that.
The Sri Lankan Ambassador for Science, Technology and Innovation, Dr. Bandula Vijay, in a truly paradigm-shifting statement, says that the general public should adapt to being less dependent on the government and focus on self-development to promote innovation within the country. Joining the At Hyde Park with Indivari Amawata program, Dr. Vijay further said that a selective education system based on critical thinking must be adopted, along with an environment conducive with constant engagement with experts in all fields, implemented for school children to promote innovative and creative thinking.
What must our attitude be, and what kind of policies do you think we must have besides asking help from the international community and trying to amass development aid from these agencies?
Answer to that question has many facets. It's not just one thing we have to do in order to change ourselves from a developing nation to a developed nation.
What type of education? That's something I would really like to discuss about.
Typically what comes to your mind is the book education. Basically getting knowledge, get past O-level and advanced level, somehow get into a university and get some sort of a degree and then get a job. To me, education means your ability to use your analytical skills and your ability to think about how to do something better for humanity and use that to make things better for yourself, your family, and if you do that, then it becomes a progress for the country. So when it comes to that, I think number one thing, I think in Sri Lanka, the general public depends too much on the government. That mindset has to change. Let's not depend on the government too much. The government has to do their job, and the government job is to create good policies that helps us, the people, to come up with and develop ourselves, and in the process, develop the country. Because if you think about it, what I'm trying to say is, think of developing yourself, and then the country will develop automatically. But please don't understand when I say develop yourself, that doesn't mean getting through the university and getting some sort of a degree and getting a job which could be fairly high paying. Developing yourself is that you have developed a skill set that you can use to innovate things, or even if you don't innovate things, to do something good for the society, for humanity. And in the process, you help the people and help yourself in the process. And that way you uplift the standard of living in your ecosystem. One of the most important things is education has to be wholesome. It cannot be just learning subjects of history and mathematics and chemistry and physics. No, this is not wholesome education. You have to have a wholesome education. And it cannot be rote learning either. That means you read whatever and you memorize it, and then there's an examination and you answer those questions through memory. In the end, the students who can adapt to that system score better than maybe some student who is really smart and cannot adapt to that system. system and wouldn't do well in the exams, and they're left behind. So what we really need is a system where the selection of the students should be based on their ability to analytical thinking. So that is very, very key. And I mean, I'm not going to go into detail about that, but I think people who are experts in this should take a look at it and adopt a system like that. So wholesome education involves analytical thinking, creative thinking, skills of thinking and solving problems. I think one of the most important things to develop yourself and the country is the environment that you live and work, the environment, the family. And I always tell young people, when the bird lays eggs and then just little bird hatches from the eggs, how does it learn how to feed themselves or fly? Is by watching the parents. Children, the kids should be able to look up to other people who have done things and then follow through. What I'm trying to tell you is that you can create, or you must create, this environment where the students, children in schools here, you have to bring them with other adults who have done it, and then they will learn from these adults, saying, oh, not only in science and technology, business, very well-known business people here, but if one of these people can visit a school and talk about him, tell him the story how he did it, it will register in these kids' children's mind, how did he do it, I can do it. So that sort of thing is, to me, I think that's a really good way to go of indoctrinating the children.
Minister of Public Security Derana English vowed to take stern action against those who disrupt law enforcement operations carried out against crime, the underworld and narcotics distribution. Addressing an event at the police headquarters, the Public Security Minister instructed the police to achieve progress in tackling both these issues within the next 6 months.
In a bid to streamline the process of identifying criminals arrested over drug-related activities, Sri Lanka Police implemented a specialized data system encompassing all police stations across the island. This data system enables all police stations to input the details of any such individual immediately following their arrest and retrieve any existing criminal records. According to the Police Media Division, currently the data system has been updated with information on individuals arrested in connection with drug-related offences. The official launch of this data system took place at the police headquarters under the patronage of Minister of Public Security Derana English.
අපි මේ රටේ ළමයින්ට දෙමෝපියන් සියලු දෙනාටම අපිට කරන්න පුළුවන් දේ තමයි මේ මත්ද්‍රව්‍ය නැති කරන එකයි පාතාලය නැති කරන එක. මට හුඟක් රිපෝට්ස් එනවා සමහර පොලිස් ඒරියාස් වල ගිහිල්ලා කම්ප්ලේන් කරුවට ඇවිල්ලා බලන්නේවත් නැහැ. ඕගොල්ලන් ඉස්සරහට ඇවිල්ලා වැඩක් කරලා මොන හරි ප්‍රශ්නයක් වුණොත් මම ඕගොල්ලන් වෙනුවෙන් පෙනී හිටිනවා. රටේ ක්‍රයිම්ස් පැත්ත නැති කරලා ඒක කරන්න මගේ ටාගට් එකක් තියෙනවා. මගේ ටාගට් එකට අනේක බාධා කරන්න එන ඕන එක්කෙනෙකුට මං ගහගෙන යනවා. මොන තරම් පවර්ෆුල් පුද්ගලයෙ වුණත් එහෙමයි. මට ජූනි 30 වෙනිදාට ඉස්සලා.
Meanwhile, the Western Province subunit affiliated to the Police Computer Crimes Investigation Division was established today under the patronage of Acting IGP Deshabandhu Tennakon. This unit will be responsible for investigating complaints against people who attempt to create racial tensions between people via social media.
Moving on to weather news, the Department of Meteorology in its forecast for tomorrow stressed that rainfall is expected to occur in the eastern and Uva provinces, with fairly heavy showers reaching up to 75 millimeters likely in certain areas, including the Western Province. Taking the prevailing inclement weather into consideration, the National Building Research Organisation has extended early landslide warnings issued to several areas over 10 districts.
Several areas over the island are experiencing heavy rainfall. The highest rainfall was recorded from the Kukuleganga area, amounting to 90 millimeters. 456 people belonging to 127 families are currently inconvenienced due to the prevailing inclement weather. 589 members of 176 families have been moved to shelters over further risks posed by adverse inclement weather. A group of officials, including the District Secretary of Badulla, the Provincial Secretary of Haldumulla and District Disaster Management Officers, engaged in inspections for landslides in Koslanda, Kalipanavala and Galabodakanda yesterday. 291 members of 86 families in Aswadduma and Kotabetma have been displaced due to landslides in the aforementioned areas. The National Building Research Organisation conducted an inspection in these areas with the help of drones to better analyse the situation. The NBRO meanwhile extended early landslide warnings issued to several areas in 10 districts island-wide. Early landslide warnings issued to areas in the Badula, Hambantota, Kalutara, Kandy, Kegol, Kurunagala, Matale, Matara, Nurelia and Ratnapura districts were extended further. Over 100 acres of land in Sungavila, which were cultivated several months ago, were inundated due to heavy rainfall in Polonnaruwa, resulting from the overflowing of the Periyaru River. The Sungavila road, which leads to the Somavathi temple in Polonnaruwa, has been inundated for several days due to the overflowing of the Mahavali River. In the meantime, the water levels of Ravana Falls have increased over the past few days. Due to heavy rainfall received in upper catchment areas, a sluice gate of the Kukuleganga Reservoir was opened this morning and remains open since. Traffic in several areas on the Bulat Sinhala Mall Cover Main Road, including Damala and Paragoda areas, were disrupted due to the overflowing of the Kudaganga River. Meanwhile, around 20 boats which were on the Balapitiya Haraspota shore were washed away and engines destroyed by unexpected tidal waves at approximately 1:30 am today. About 200 boats had been on the shore at the time of the incident and several were damaged after colliding on each other.
දිවයිනේ අද දිනේ පහළ වායුගෝලයේ තරංගමය ස්වභාවයක් ඉස්මතු වෙලා තියෙනවා. මේ අනුව උතුරු මැද නැගෙනහිර ඌව වගේ පළාත්වල කඩින් කඩ වැසි තත්ත්වයන් නිර්මාණය වෙනවා. මීට අමතරව දිවයිනේ සෙසු පළාත්වල සන්ධ්‍යා කාලයේ හෝ රාත්‍රී කාලයේ වැසි හෝ ගිගුරුම් සහිත වැසි තත්ත්වයන් තනින් තන ඇතිවීමේ හැකියාවන් තියෙනවා.
Moving on to protests news, employees of Sri Lanka state-owned dairy company Milko engaged in protest today in demand of the removal of the entity's chairman Renuka Pereira from his post. Concurrently, employees of Sri Lanka Telecom staged a protest expressing their objection to privatising the company as well as reducing employee privileges.
Employees of Milko Private Limited engaged in a protest in front of the main Milko factory in Colombo today, demanding the removal of chairman Renuka Pereira from his post.
මේ රේනුක පෙරේරා මේ ආයතනයට ගෙන යන වැඩපිළිවෙල අනුව මේ ආයතනයේ දැවන්ත ලෙස කඩාන වැටිලා තියෙනවා. සේවක කප්පාදු විශාල ප්‍රමාණයක් සිද්ධ වෙලා තියෙනවා. හිතක් පපුවක් තියෙනවා නම් කරුණා කරලා මේ සමාගම ඇතැරලා යන්න ඕන.
Later on, a tense situation erupted after the general manager of Milko engaged in discussions with the demonstrators.
මේ සභාපතිවරයා ඉවත් කරේ නැත්නම් මේ මාරාන්තික උපවාසය හා සීලම කර්මාන්තශාලා අපේ නැවත වස්සනවා කියන එකත් මේ ලාවේ සඳහන් කරන්න ඕන.
Employees of the Milko dairy factory in Digana also joined in the protest to demand the removal of the chairman of the company. In other related news, a protest organised by employees of Sri Lanka Telecom was launched today. The protest was staged against efforts to privatise Sri Lanka Telecom and reduce the employee privileges of the entity.
සභාපතිතුමනි ඔබතුමා මේ අවස්ථාවේදී සේවකයන්ට ඇහුම්කන් දීලා සේවක ප්‍රශ්න විසඳන්න ඇහුම්කන් නොදුන්නොත් ඔබතුමාගේ කාලයත් සුමාන දෙකක් ඇතුළත අපි ඉවර කරන්න ලැහැස්ති කියන එක පැහැදිලිව කියනවා. මේ සභාපතිවරයා පැමිණිය සමගම සේවකයන්ගේ සියලු අයිතිවාසිකම් බිඳ වැටලා තියෙනවා.
Sri Lanka's Ministry of Finance issuing a statement said that Princess Anne, the Royal Princess of the United Kingdom of Great Britain, has scheduled a visit to Sri Lanka from the 10th to the 13th of January 2024. She is the second child and only daughter of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, and the only sister of King Charles III. She will be accompanied by her spouse, Vice Admiral Sir Tim Lawrence. Princess Anne is visiting Sri Lanka on an invitation by the government of Sri Lanka to participate in events to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the establishing of diplomatic relations between Sri Lanka and the UK. Women in Management, in collaboration with the International Finance Corporation, organised the Top 10 Champions of Diversity, recognising corporate leaders who have contributed to bringing diversity, inclusion and equality into the corporate culture of the country recently in Colombo. The event was organised in parallel to the celebration of the International Men's Day, which was on the 19th of November.
Recognition of the top 10 champions of diversity, women in management in collaboration with the International Finance Corporation, recognized and awarded corporate leaders who promoted diversity, inclusion and equality in the corporate sector of the country. The top 10 champions of diversity recognized under 10 categories include technology, the social responsibility sector, banking and finance, media, advocacy in diversity, digital and communication, inclusivity, business diversity, manufacturing and export, insurance, entrepreneurship in manufacturing and social responsibility, and community empowerment.
Embracing diversity through the lens of gender, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, ability, today is a must. It's something that every institution or company needs to have if they want to thrive today. I also think that in addition to the economic impact on the company, it has a very important impact on the workforce because it makes the workforce be more equitable, there is more fairness, there is more respect between workers.
The wonderful thing about celebrating men who celebrate women is that I think there's always been that cliche that, behind every successful man is a woman. Really, nobody's sat out and then taken the successful men and actually celebrated their women. But here, Sulo, all her large-heartedness, has decided to come up with an award which looks at big corporates and companies that have, by and large, been game changers in the country.
Recognizing Sri Lankan women and bringing them to the forefront, not just for their achievement, but to inspire women in Sri Lanka. I never thought I'll go it for 15 years. After establishing Women in Management in 2010-2011, I introduced the Professional and Career Women Awards in Sri Lanka. Before Aragale and everything came out, I was the one understood that the youth has an issue. So the New Generation chapter was organized. For the last 4 to 5 years, WIM has recognized more than 200 youth in Sri Lanka. And if you can see here, my left-hand side, all are from our New Generation youth. So this is how we have worked for the youth in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka needs real leaders, not just leaders on the titles. I think that is the amazing thing. So this is what the event is all about. And event is not just celebrating them, but also giving an inspiration to our corporates, our society, and our young people.
Welcome back. Minister of Ports, Shipping and Aviation Nimal Siripala de Silva highlighted that the shortage of human resources in aviation services must be addressed, adding that solutions for this must be formulated despite Sri Lanka being 10 years behind its contemporaries. He went on to state that measures such as establishing an international flight school as well as introducing an aeronautical engineering program of reputable standard to universities must be adopted.
Sri Lanka Civil Aviation Authority, Sri Lanka Rupavahini Corporation and Sri Lankan Airlines signed a Memorandum of Understanding in a bid to promote jobs within the aviation sector among school children. The above initiative is to be implemented through television programs and in-person orientation by Sri Lankan personnel.
මම මේ වර්ෂයේ ගුවන් සේවා ක්ෂේත්‍රයේ බිලියන 26කුත් වරාය ක්ෂේත්‍රයේ බිලියන 19කුත් ලාභයක් අරගෙන භාණ්ඩාගාරයට බිලියන 10ක් ලබා දීලා තිනවා පරිත්‍යාගයක්. සමස්ත ගුවන් සේවා ක්ෂේත්‍රයේ ලෝකයේ ගත්තොත් අද විශාල වශයෙන් මානව සම්පත්වල හිගකමක් තියෙනවා. එහෙමනම් මේ ප්‍රශ්නයට අපි පිළියම් හොයන්න තිබුණේ මීට අවුරුදු 10කට ඉස්සෙල්ලා පිළියම් හෙව්වනම් අද අපට ඇතිතරම් ගුවන් නියමුවන් ඉන්නවා. ගුවන් ඉංජිනේරුවෝන් ඉන්නවා. නමුත් දැන් අපි ප්‍රමාද වැඩි. නමුත් ප්‍රමාද වෙලා හරි මේ වැඩ කටයුත්ත අපි ආරම්භ කරන්න ඕන. ගුවන් සේවා ක්ෂේත්‍රය බොහෝ රටවල ජාතික ආර්ථිකයට 20%ක 30ක දායකත්වයක් ලබා දෙනවා. අපි ලබා දෙන දායකත්වය ඉතාම සුළුයි. දැන් මත්තල ගුවන් තොටුපළට ආයෝජකයන් පැමිණෙනවා. නම මං හැම වෙලාවෙම කිව්වේ මත්තල ගුවන් තොටුපළ විශේෂයෙන්ම ගුවන් නියමුවන් පුහුණු කරන ගුවන් තොටුපළක් බවට ඒ වගේම ෆ්ලයිಯಿಂග් ස්කූල් එකක් හොඳ ඉන්ටර්නැෂනල් ෆ්ලයිಯಿಂග් ස්කූල් එකක් හදන්න අපි මඩකලපුව ගුවන් තොටුපළත් අපි මුළු ගුවන් තොටුපළම අපි දෙන්නම් අපේ ලංකාවේ තාම විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයක හරියටම හොඳ ඒරෝනොටිකල් පාඨමාලාවක් නැහැ ඉංජිනේරින් ඒක අපේ අධ්‍යාපනයේ තියෙන අඩුපාඩුවක් ඒකත් අපි ඇති කරන්න ඕනේ.
The Colombo Stock Exchange closed in red today. The CSE All-Share Price Index was down 0.49%, ending at 10,783.81 points. Positive contributors to the ASPI were PGP Glass Ceylon, Aitken Spence and Tokyo Cement Company Lanka. The S&P SL20 meanwhile dropped 0.58% and settled at 3,119.18 points. Market turnover closed at 674 million rupees. The food, beverage and tobacco sector was the top contributor to market turnover, while the utilities sector was the second highest contributor. With that, let's take a look at how the rupee traded against other major currencies as the day progressed. Welcome back. On an invitation by the Speaker of Parliament, Mahinda Yapa, the Chamber of Young Lankan Entrepreneurs and the National Chamber of Exporters engaged in bilateral business discussions with the Busan Economic Promotion Agency of South Korea. During the discussion, the agency expressed its interest in investing in Sri Lanka, but questioned the barriers to entry which impacts investment timelines. With that, let's take a look at news from the corporate sector today.
On the invitation of Speaker of Parliament Mahinda Yapa and MP Dayasiri Jayasekara, the Chamber of Young Lankan Entrepreneurs and the National Chamber of Exporters engaged in bilateral business discussions with the Busan Economic Promotion Agency in South Korea. The aim of this dialogue was to bolster inward industrial investment in Sri Lanka and broaden operational opportunities for Sri Lankan businesses in Busan to stimulate positive returns. During the meeting, concerns were raised about the barriers to entry, particularly with regard to inefficiencies on the part of local authorities, impacting investment timelines. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations handed over 2 specially designed climate-resilient fishing boats and 30 modified fish display stalls to the Ministry of Fisheries in line with FAO's commitment to sustainable development and addressing climate change challenges. The SL20 and SL23 fishing boats, measuring 6.3 and 7 meters in length, were designed to coastal fishing operations in Sri Lanka. Adhering to FAO, ILO, IMO standards, these boats prioritize the safety of fishermen and are built to be capsize resistant and withstand the challenges posed by climate change, including more frequent and intense storms and cyclones. The first gynecological laparoscopy and endometriosis center in a private hospital in Sri Lanka was established recently in Narahenpita at King's Hospital. This center provides laparoscopic treatment for endometriosis and gynecological diseases, which affects roughly 1 in 10 women between the ages of 16 to 44.
That's all the news I have for you for this evening. As we wrap this week up, join us again tomorrow on Sri Lanka's premier news channel, first at 9 on AdaDerana. I'm Jonathan Benedict. Have a good night and a blessed Friday ahead.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.